Thank you, Kate. Just to say hello to everyone, my name's Alastair Nesbitt. I run a company called Vinescapes. Until recently, we were actually called Climate Wine Consulting, which perhaps gives an early indication as to how much emphasis we place in our work on the importance of weather and climate data in what we do. We're a consultancy that advises vineyards or soon-to-be vineyards in the UK primarily, but also overseas, around site selection for vineyards, varietal suitability, how to manage and grow vineyards, what business models could or should look like for anybody thinking of getting into viticulture or winemaking. And we're also involved in winery design and construction. Just to say first up, all of the information or early results coming out of this project, out of this research, are highly valuable to us, and they're highly valuable to our clients. We're working in times very different to 20 or 30 years ago, when if we had a similar consultancy in somewhere like the Champagne region of France, we wouldn't be needing to place so much emphasis or reliability on climate and weather data, because generally the conditions had been relatively stable for the last 50, 60, 70 plus years, and it was well known by looking over the garden fence what would grow where and how. Working in the UK in the last 20 years, we've seen a real shift. There's a nice image down in the bottom left of this screen indicating that shift. We've seen a real shift in particularly growing season temperatures, which have enabled new varieties to be planted that are much more commercially viable than some of the older Germanic varietals that you can see we use to make wine of the type shown down in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, the Müller-Thurgaus, Reichensteiners, Seyval Blancs, the more Germanic varietals. And we've seen a shift into, as Steve mentioned earlier, particularly sparkling wine, using classic champagne varietals, and you can see some of the bottles and producers in the image at the top there. So we're working in a moving environment, and the data that we use is critical to us, particularly when trying to work out for a new or existing grower, where is a good place to plant a vineyard. On that basis, we spend probably around 50% of our time as a business taking different data sets and trying to work out where is a good place for new clients to invest in terms of buying or renting land, whether it's suitable for viticulture or not, and we use a range of climate and bioclimatic indices to help make that decision, as well as looking at soil and topography, etc. And where would make a viable business, not just now, and this is where this information or data comes in, but a viable business that will stand the test of time and be resilient over the next 20 to 30 years. I think it's already been mentioned by Declan that once vines are planted, they're in the ground for that length of time. And there's a huge amount of investment goes in behind that. So we're lucky to have access to this data. The UK industry, until the last 15, 20 years, really grew by people relying on either single weather station data to inform them as to whether an area or location was suitable for viticulture, or by looking over the garden fence, neither of which are really robust models of investment when you're talking of investments upwards of millions of pounds. What we're able to do is take climate data, compute or convert that data into bioclimatic indices. These are indexes that tell us on an international scale which varieties are suitable and whether a site is suitable, and then pass that data on in an informed way to clients to help them make an informed data decision process in terms of investment. As well as looking at opportunities, we also focus using climate data or weather data on risks. And I think Steve showed a slide earlier looking at particularly cooler years or frost-prone years. There is a big problem in UK viticulture generally with frost in the early part of the season between mid-March and mid-May, when it can damage young buds and shoots. And there's a graph here up on the right-hand side of the screen just showing an example of model data that we use to help understand where a frost event has occurred. And this can be both for the practitioner, but also, for example, for insurance claims against loss. So we use a range of data in a range of ways. The audiences that get value from the data and are going to get increasing value from this research are growers and vineyard managers, so practitioners understanding the intra-seasonal events that help them manage their vineyard properly. Vineyard owners or potential owners, i.e. investors. We also work closely with Wines of Great Britain, who are a partner on this research project, and help them understand from a policy perspective the impact of current climate on vine growing and the impact that has on yields and disease, etc. But also, hopefully soon, we'll be able to talk to them about what the future holds, and to Kate's point, help try and avoid a process of lock-in, which is starting to become problematic in other areas. And last but not least, we also work closely with the research community, and we really do welcome any derived benefit from this type of research. That's all from me. I'll hand over to Francis, who's a colleague, but also has a lot of experience managing vineyards in the UK.
Hi, yeah, so as Alastair said, I work with him at Vinescapes. I'm the viticulturist there, and one of my specialties is viticulture in challenging climates, so for the UK. And the UK in particular, planting decisions are really key. As said previously, the vines are in the ground for 30+ years. This means that it'll drive the direction of the business for generations. So typically we start looking at 3 points. So the land, the climate, and the market. We're looking for harmony between all of these 3 factors. And what we do is, in our business, is we use data to identify any factors that would signal concerns or make land unsuitable for planting vines. We'll make a judgment based on these data, including soil analysis, combined with our experience to assess whether any of these limiting factors can be overcome. From a real life perspective, what we'll find is that those without experience in viticulture often look at one of these points in isolation. So for example, land, climate, or market. They won't use data, or they use the wrong data to drive their decisions, which leads to people making very expensive mistakes. Or on the flip side, it can lead to people passing on good opportunities. For example, I know one producer who planted Riesling based on the fact that the average growing season temperatures, so March through October, were similar to areas in Germany, known for producing really high quality still table wines. So although the vines established, cropped really well, and were generally really healthy, the fruit wouldn't ripen, even when yield was halved by removing fruit. And this is interesting, so referring back to the schematic that both Kate and Steve showed, if you look at the Riesling bar, it says between 14 and 17 degrees Celsius are sort of the ideal growing conditions. But from real life practice and experimentation with this producer, we're able to identify that actually Riesling doesn't grow very well in the UK. And when you delve deeper into the data, you also see that although the growing season average temperatures are similar, the springs and summers in Germany were warmer, the sunlight hours were higher, and the slopes were quite a lot steeper with a different soil structure. So it's all of these factors that play in together that can really make or break a business. Luckily for these people, it wasn't it was just an experimental plot, but it really illustrates the importance of matching up viticultural knowledge and climate data. Yeah. So on the flip side of this, we're also seeing a real willingness to experiment. People are wanting to innovate and differentiate. So whether that's wine styles, varieties and clones, all the way up to packaging, there's also a sort of shift in sort of polar shift. We're getting requests from Finland, Norway, etc. There's vineyards as high up as in Leeds. So ultimately, there is a potential for adaptation. But what really needs to be stressed is that this is something that needs to be considered from the beginning, before your vines are in the ground. Yeah, that's all from me, I think.